Alrighty, we're going to try our third lesson. Hopefully I'll be able to get through this in less than 20 takes. We are moving into our first essay. In college you will have to be writing, basically there's 4 types of essays. I'll talk about them more in the next lesson, but basically there is the summary response, also known as the article analysis. There's your informational research paper. There's your argument research paper. And then there's just your generic analysis research, or not research, I'm sorry, just generic analysis essay. And an analysis essay in that case is usually where the professor has given you some very specific parameters of what they want you to discuss and look at. And it's going to be different for every class. That's going to be the last thing we talk about in this course. Today we're going to be talking about the summary response, also known as the article analysis. This essay is given usually because the professor wants you to be familiar with something, but we don't have time to talk about it in the classroom. So the professor assigns you an article or a reading assignment out of the textbook or something and tells you to go home and read it. Now, to guarantee that you actually read it and to see that you understood it, the professor asks you to write a brief essay, usually 1 to 2 pages, 3 pages at most, depends on the length of the article. And all you're doing is you're summarizing what the article was about in 1 paragraph, and then the rest of the essay is just your opinion, your response to it. What did you think? What did it mean to you? Why do you care? So that's what we're going to be building up towards today. So the first thing that you have to know for this type of essay is how to summarize. So let me find the right PowerPoint here. Summarizing. It's amazing how many people don't know how to summarize. It seems like a very simple thing to do, and yet most people don't do it correctly. Summarizing is quite simply giving me the main idea. I don't need all the details. Oh, look, I was just talking about that. Okay, let's move on. Ding, 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 ding. All right. So, the summary is just a quick review of the main ideas of what you just read. You're not going into great detail. You're just trying to give me basically a topic sentence. This was the main thing that this author was trying to say. And these were some of the most important points the author made. So like here, as Albert Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you didn't understand it well enough. So you need to make sure that you really understand the article in order to be able to summarize it. Summarizing involves putting the main ideas into your own words, including only the main points. It is necessary to attribute summarized ideas to the original source, blah, 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 blah. In other words, keep it short. Don't go crazy with details because they're not needed. Make sure that you give me the author and the title of the article that you've read. This is important because your professors have multiple classes and we have multiple assignments going at the same time, and your class's article comes in and can get mixed in with other classes. So I personally want to be able to identify it immediately when I pull it up. I may mix up your name with somebody from another class. I may have 13 Sean's that semester. I've had 3 Tayas once. I want to be able to know immediately which class I'm looking at. So when I pull it up, if you tell me the author and the title, I instantly know what the assignment is, and I'll be able to read it and understand. If you don't tell me that, I'm guessing for a while, which article is this person talking about? Okay? So you only want to include main ideas. What is the major point? Don't go crazy with details. A summary is brief, 1 paragraph. Of course, this can change depending on the length of what you've just read. If you're reading Tolstoy's War and Peace, oh my gosh, that thing's like 3,000 pages long. Yeah, you're not going to be able to summarize that in 1 paragraph. God help you if you ever have a teacher who tells you to do this. Hopefully never. Now, the point of this assignment is that the teacher wants to discuss something in the next class. So they send you home to read it so that you're familiar with it, and the next day we can talk about it in class. The essay is assigned to make sure that you do the reading and that you do understand it, so that there's something to do in the next class. I've had that happen. We come into class the next day, and everybody sits there staring. Ugh. I say, well, what did you think about it? Ugh. So, do you think it's a good idea that we should reinstate the draft? Ugh. Do you even know what the draft is? Okay, so I guess I'm just going to give you all zeros for the day. Go read that article right now before I kill you. yeah, it gets really frustrating, so we have to do something to ensure that you read the article. So remember, your summary is only going to be about a paragraph long. 3 to 4 sentences, maybe 5 to 6 sentences, depends on the length of the article. Usually you stop and think, how many pages long was the article? That usually gives you an idea of how many sentences you're really going to go by. Do not use direct quotes, not needed. Don't want to see statistics, examples, any data, no specifics, no details. All right? This is a brief explanation. I want the main idea. I want the most important points the author made, and that's it. You don't have to try to prove anything to me here, because I have read the article. I know what the article's about. So all you're doing is reminding me what I'm about to read. Oh yeah, that's that article. Okay, now I remember. Now I can understand what your opinion's going to be about. Again, I can't emphasize this enough. Identify the author and the title. Boy, I seem to be repeating myself here, but I think it's necessary if you're looking back over this because people forget this. Please be sure that you understood what you just read. Don't just read the first paragraph or first few paragraphs and assume that you now understand it. The very first time I did this assignment, I gave my class an article that was about a senator who was trying to legislate changes in oh great, my brain just went dead. I can't remember the name of it. These stem cells, and how stem cells are being researched, and that there's some big problems. The article starts off by explaining that the senator was having trouble having children. He and his wife were not getting pregnant. So he went to a fertility clinic, and the fertility clinic did a wonderful job. She got pregnant. They wound up having 2 kids, decided that was enough, and they stopped. And then the senator went back to the doctor and said, well, what's going to happen to the remaining embryos that you froze? The ones that you fertilized and were saving in case we wanted to have more children. The doctor said, we're going to destroy them. The senator said, oh, that's a terrible thing. This was about the first 4, maybe 5 paragraphs of the article. It took up most of the first page. Now, this article was 6 pages long. When you turn the page, it then starts talking about stem cells and the status of the law at the time, and the law basically said that you can't harvest fertilized embryos, whether from any kind of fertility clinic, any kind of birth control clinic. And the reason that law was in place was they were afraid that these clinics were going to be encouraging young girls who were pregnant to give up their embryos so that they could harvest stem cells, give them an abortion so we could get stem cells. So this law was kind of off track a bit. It had good intentions, but it was creating huge problems. So the senator said, we need to change this. There are all sorts of embryos that are being destroyed constantly, and there's no reason for it. I want to change the law. The rest of the article then talked about what is a stem cell, what is stem cell research all about, what do they hope stem cells will be able to do, that sort of thing. Now, half the class didn't read that far. Half the class got to about the point where the senator got his wife pregnant, and they were all so happy. And they wrote their response saying, you know, it's really nice that there are fertility clinics out there so people can have babies. No, I wanted to hear what you thought about stem cells and stem cell research. So please make sure you read the entire article and make sure that you understood what it's talking about. If you don't understand what the article's talking about, and I've had this happen, I've had students come back and say, I didn't get it. That's fine. What you do is do your best in the summary to tell me what you think the article is about, and then after that you say, this is some complex stuff. it's over my head. I really don't understand. I'm not a biology major. I don't really understand what stem cells are all about. I don't understand this thing about cloning or how all this stuff works. This is really too hard for me. That's acceptable. Your teacher needs to know where the class sits, where how much they do understand. So when I get this back, I realized, ooh, I'm going to have to do some education here about stem cells if we're going to proceed any further with this course. If I get it back and everybody understood it, fine, we're just going to launch on further. So make sure that you go over it more than once. Read it 2, 3 times. The first time you just read it to try to get an idea what the thing's about. The second time, this is where you want to start taking notes, highlighting. You're going to look for things like, okay, these are words I don't understand. Oh, here are things I really found interesting. Here are things that I think really highlight the main idea. You're looking for things to use so that you can write your essay. Now, once you've written your summary, you need to think about how am I going to respond to it. So like in this particular case, Lucy's giving her response to what Snoopy has written. Lucy doesn't like what Snoopy has written, and that's fine. Her opinion is valid. Your opinion is valid as long as it stays to the topic. Don't go off topic. I had a student one time, we were talking about Obama putting in the healthcare plan, and she just went bonkers. She says, just like the government, always to stick its nose in my business, always telling me what to do. And she wrote her whole essay about how the government had no business telling her what to do. Well, she never once mentioned health care. So while her point was valid, it never related back to the article. She went off on government cheese and other things that oh, these crazy new cameras up there filming us while we're trying to drive, and oh, she just was all over the place. Very little of it related to the article, if anything at all. Make sure that your response does connect back to what the article is about. So, what did you really think about it? How does this affect you? What does this have to do with your life? Do you really care? This actually is going to be your article. You're going to want to think about how does it affect you, because you can read this and think, yeah, I don't get what this really has to do with my life. I want you to really think about, why did I ask you to read this? Okay. So when you're getting ready to write your response, now you've already written the summary, so you go back and look for things that maybe that you liked, that you agreed with, or things you didn't like or disagreed with. Anything you didn't understand, any questions you have about it. I don't know why they did such and such. Take notes about this. Look at any phrases, any words, any ideas that you really would like to know more about, or that you definitely want to talk about in your response. For example, I've had to do this before, many, many, many times. So when approaching the following reading assignment, I used highlighters. Because see, I was an art minor when I was in college, and I love color, 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 color. So I like working with highlighters. You can just underline, you can take notes. There's all kinds of different ways to approach this. This is just the way I like to do things. So anything I wanted to talk about in my summary, I highlighted in yellow. Anything I just plain wanted to talk about, I highlighted in blue. So this particular article, consumerism, I had to take a business course once. Oh my God, I hated it. But I'm an English major. I don't care about business, you know. But anyway, took this business course. So I had to read this article about consumerism. Now, this article was actually pretty interesting because, and I'm sure you can't really read it right now, but it talked about how the iPhone 6 came out and how people went nuts to go get the iPhone 6. This whole first 2 paragraphs just talk about how thousands of people waited in line to get into the Apple stores to go and be the first to buy the iPhone. And this iPhone was ridiculous because the iPhone really wasn't any better than the iPhone 5. It had a couple of more little gadgets to it, some few new apps or things, but really, as far as the important stuff that you needed to do, it was basically the same phone. It just had some pretty little extras to it. And people were paying $1,000 or more for this new phone. This was not, actually I think in this article they said it was $600 to $800 or something. I know that the iPhone 10 when it came out was $1,000. And it's nuts. These people walked out of their jobs and waited on the sidewalk for 3 days to get in. It even tells you here, the mayor of Philadelphia shut down business so that he could be in line to go out there and get the whole city of Philadelphia. All right, city can burn down. I don't care. I got to get my iPhone. What is this craziness? Why do people feel they have to go buy things like this? So the author talks about this concept of must have. Why do we consume? Why do we buy the things that we do buy? And he says that basically our government has convinced us that we need to buy things we don't need. So it used to be that if you're talking about before the Industrial Revolution, people farmed and basically grew and made most of the things they need themselves. And the few things that they couldn't produce themselves, they went to an artisan, like a carpenter or a cobbler who makes shoes or somebody like that, and had them build it for them. And usually they traded. Here, I will give you a chicken for that pair of shoes. I will give you eggs. I will give you a side of beef, whatever. I will give you some vegetables. So trade was the main thing. Really wasn't a lot of money changing hands. Inflation really didn't exist yet. Then we get to the Industrial Revolution, and boom, everything takes off because now things are being mass produced. And so we don't need these artisans anymore. The machines are building them for us. But they're building them by the thousands. How do you convince people to buy thousands of pairs of shoes? Well, you make them cheap so that they fall apart. Say, in the old days, you bought a pair of shoes that could last you 10, 20 years. Today you buy a pair of shoes, you're lucky they go 2 years. So, he talks about these things here, about how things are made to break, that we are being made to convince that the new version is better than the old version. We make them look flashier. He talks about all these different ways that the companies convince us that we need to buy these things, even though we really don't need them. Look around your house sometime and think about how many things you really need in that house, and how much stuff you have that you could live without. It's scary how much money we waste on stuff like that. So I highlighted, I want to talk about this, I want to talk about that, boom, 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 boom. And then, here is the conclusion, which this is very important. Whatever you're reading, whether it's a poem or a play, a novel, an essay, an article, the most important piece of information, the thing that the author wants you to remember the most, will come at the very end. It will come in the last chapter. It will come in the last 2 lines of the poem. And in an essay or an article, it will come in the last paragraph. So always check out the conclusion, because that's where the main idea is going to be contained. All right? So, just to give you an example, I've got a couple of passages here. When you look at them, I want you to understand that when you summarize, you have to say it in your own words. You can't use the words of the author. It's because I want to see that you understood what you read. If you're just repeating what the author said, that doesn't tell me you understood it. That just means you're a parrot. You can repeat things. I don't want you to be a bird brain. I want you to make sense to me. I want to know that you understood the material. So, for example, picture this. A herd of elephants flies past you at 60 miles per hour, followed by a streak of tigers, a pride of lions, and a bunch of clowns. What do you see? Why, it must be a circus train. One of the first uses of the circus train is credited to W.C. Coop. He partnered with P.T. Barnum in 1871 to expand the reach of their newly combined shows using locomotives. Before circus trains, these operators had to lug around all of their animals, performers, and equipment with a team of more than 600 horses. Since there were no highways, these voyages were rough and took a long time. Circuses would stop at many small towns between the large venues. Performing at many of these small towns was not very profitable. Because of these limitations, circuses could not grow as large as the imaginations of the operators. After they began using circus trains, Barnum and Coop only brought their show to large cities. These performances were much more profitable, and the profits went towards creating an even bigger and better circus. Multiple rings were added, and the show went on. Today, Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus still rely on the circus train to transport their astounding show, but now they use 2. Okay. If you had to summarize this, and I'm going to ask it in 1 sentence, maybe 2. If you could summarize this in 1 or 2 sentences, what would you say? First of all, look and see what information seems to be repeated. Oh, circus train. Circus train. To expand the reach using locomotives. Circus trains. stop between. Okay, takes us a while to get back to it, but then trains start coming up again. Notice the word trains comes up many times in this piece. I wonder if circus trains are important. Something's important about trains. Okay, so now I ask myself, what is important about trains? The invention of the circus train made it possible to transport their show. I don't need to know that it took more than 600 horses. I don't need to know about the fact there were no highways, that it was dangerous. Those are details. You can discuss the details all you want in your response. But right now, all I need to know is that the invention of the train made it possible for them to transport their show, and by transporting their show faster and easier, their profits went up. Their profits went up, that meant bigger shows. That's all I needed to hear. So, for example, the invention of the train made it easier for circuses to move their animals and equipment. This caused profits to increase and the size of the circuses to grow. Notice I'm not using any of the words from the original. Now this one is very hard. Jacques Cousteau. Jacques Cousteau. Oh, what a man. I wanted to work with Jacques Cousteau. I was originally a biology major. And calculus crushed my dreams. I couldn't pass calculus, so therefore I couldn't stay in the biology program. Which, if you talk to any biologist today, they'll tell you we don't use calculus, and if we do, we use we have charts and books that tell us what to do. We don't have that memorized, but it doesn't matter. Jacques Cousteau was the man who basically invented the modern scuba system. Before that, we had these giant suits that we put on. We sank to the bottom of the water with a giant hose sticking out of our heads and walked around with weights on. He invented scuba gear, the flippers, the aqua lungs so that you could breathe, the face mask, all of it. All of modern ocean exploration is thanks to Jacques Cousteau. So anyway, back in May of 1990, 30 years ago, Jacques Cousteau made the following observation. The Antarctic is the vast source of cold on our planet, just as the sun is the source of our heat, and it exerts tremendous control on our climate, Jacques Cousteau told the camera. The cold ocean waters around Antarctica flow north to mix with warmer water from the tropics, and its upwellings help to cool both the surface water and our atmosphere. Yet the fragility of this regulating system is now threatened by human activity. Wow. This is where you're going to run into problems. Sometimes the author has said things so perfectly. How do you restate it in your own words? Sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes you use quotes. You might want to quote this. The fragility of this regulating system is now threatened by human activity. Quote, quote, quote. Okay? It's so perfect. How do you really restate it? What is his main idea here? Okay, he's talking about the Antarctic. What is he saying about the Antarctic? It's the source of cold, okay? Now, what does it do for us? It cools the oceans, alright? Now, what's the problem? We're the problem. People are the problem. So now, knowing that, how do I phrase this in my own words? Antarctica is like a giant ice cube cooling the waters of our planet. However, people are causing the Earth to warm and the ice in Antarctica is now in danger of melting. Sometimes you have to phrase it like you're talking to your 3-year-old little brother or sister. Make it simple. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I prefer simple because it proves to me you understand what you're saying. Okay, so that's the summary response essay as far as examples for you. Now let me show you what the actual assignment is. Let's get rid of this. Now, no, we don't want to look at that yet. Go away. We want to look at the actual assignment, which is where? Over here, under essay directions. The summary response essay, and I'm sure you can't read that on this thing here. See if I can make it bigger. There, that's probably better. Hopefully it's better for you. Okay. Now, I'll bring it up in a minute. Right now, if you try to look on the computer, it's probably not there yet. It should be popping up any minute. But I have 2 attachments here, and I'll come back to them in a minute. First of all, the summary response essay. I'm giving you an article which will be attached, and I'm going to show you the article in a moment. So you're going to write a summary response essay based on the article. Your paper should be 2 to 3 pages long. Actually, 2 to 3 pages. By 2, I mean you at least go a third of the way down the second page, not one line onto the second page, right? And you're going to follow MLA format. What's MLA format? We're going to talk about that in a minute too. I know that your thought, oh, he hasn't explained that. Well, I'm going to. Remember what I just talked to you about, that it's divided into two parts, a one-paragraph summary, and then the rest of the essay is just what you thought about it. Okay? Please stick to the point. Don't get all off base. Stick to what the article is talking about. Your reactions are only valid as long as you can justify them. So sometimes you may want to refer to some specific things said in the article. You can quote if you want to. I don't really care. It's not required. If you do, you don't have to give citations because we're only working from one article. It's when you're working from more than one source that you have to give citations. Okay, and right here, this is how I'm going to grade it. I'm going to look at these 6 things to make sure that they are there. And that's how I'm going to figure it out. It's worth 50 points. So you can figure each of these is worth about 7.5 points or so. So please make sure that you have done these things. Your essay must be typed. Spelling and grammar do count because you've had time to sit down and edit it and look it over. And then you will submit it as an attachment to an email to me. Okay? Now, let me show you the article itself. It's down here. Okay. It's from the Sun paper from about 3 or 4 days ago, depending on when you look at it. It was April 3rd. So, this is about, it's very hard to find any news articles right now that aren't about the coronavirus. So this is about that Navy captain. Oh, crud, wait a minute. Let me fix this for you so it doesn't look so weird. Get that off of there. Okay. Now, this is about that Navy captain who got fired. He was removed from his command because he let the world know that people on his ship had the coronavirus and it was out of control and he didn't know what to do about it. So, when you read this, first of all, you're going to have to be able to summarize the main ideas. So it's more than just what I just said to you. That's just one of the sentences. You're going to have to give me a couple more sentences about what the big problem there is. Give me the reason why he was fired. And did people agree with that? That sort of thing. When you're done reading all this, I want you to tell me what you thought. Why is this important? Why should we care that this captain got fired for what he did? You're not in the military. Why is it important to you? Maybe you have relatives in the military and you understand a little bit more about this. That's great. Let me know what your background is and how you feel about these things. What are your personal feelings? Do you feel like he was out of line and deserved to be fired? Or do you feel that the Secretary of the Navy was out of line and shouldn't have fired him for that? That he was, because a captain's job is to protect his crew. I want you to think about these things. All right. So that's the article. Now, when you go to do this, you're going to follow MLA format. MLA format. Ding, 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 ding. When you click on it, this is going to show up. Follow these directions. Literally go through them step by step. If you do this, you are 100% MLA format, and then you don't have to worry about it. So before you begin, before you type anything, check this. First thing you want to do is check the page setup. So, they just closed out. Go into Microsoft Word. Make sure you can see everything. Thank you. Now, the first thing you want to do is check the margins. You want to be in normal. It doesn't always come up that way. Sometimes it comes up in moderate or something. See what like here, last custom setting might show up. So whoever was on your computer last may have changed the setting. So make sure that you're in normal margins. Okay, that's under page layout. Okay, so make sure you're in normal margins. Fonts and spacing, you want to be in Times New Roman at 12 point. We like that because it's easy on the eyes and it doesn't eat up a lot of ink when we print it. So you're going to check here, you're going to go back to home and notice that good old Microsoft Word likes to go to Calibri. You want to go to Times New Roman. You want to make sure you're in 12 point. Next thing you're going to check, make sure you're in double space. You want to make sure that you don't have extra space being added between paragraphs. Now this is tricky. Microsoft Word, again, likes to add spaces. It's set up for businesses, not for academics. So what you do is you come up here, make sure you're on home, swing on over to paragraph, click on this little arrow here, and you'll get a drop down box. When you come down here, make sure your indentation is set up to the first line at 0.5. And see this spacing? This is where it gets you. You want them both to be 0. So drop them both to 0. It likes to set it to 12, to 10, to 6, whatever. Change it. Make sure it's at 0. Over here on line spacing, not multiple, you want double. All right. Once you've done all that, you click OK. That's all set to go. Now let's see, next. Okay, now you want to do the headers. You're supposed to have your name and page number at the top of every page. How do you get it in there? Most people just type it in, and then they go and do their essay, and then they get to the second page, and they make some changes, and the page keeps, this information keeps moving up and down the page, and it drives them crazy. You have to keep cutting and pasting and moving and shifting. There's an easy way around this. Just take your mouse to the very top of the page, double click. It opens the header, and it even puts you in the header, whatever you call this thing. Then you want to go over here to where it says page number. Click on that. Click on top of page. Then come down here to the third option and click that. And notice it puts a page number up here for you. Now the computer will automatically change the page number for you from now on. Every time you go to a new page, it will change the page. The only other thing that you want to do is you want to type your last name there. So that, whoops, I typed my name wrong because I don't know how to spell my own name. Put your name up there. This is because if for some reason the staple tears and the pages fall apart, I can find all your pages and put it back together very easily. I don't have to sit there and try to make sense out of, does this page go with that page? Does this flow? I can just slap them right back together. You're done with that, you come down here and double click, and you're now out of the header and don't have to worry about it anymore. So that now, if we were to go to a second page, if you can see it because it's very faint, you can see that we're on page 2 and my name popped up again. So now you're ready to get started. And all you have to do is type your name, the course, my name, whoops, my name, and then the date. Then you're ready to start writing. That's all there is to it. I have an example for you to look at. Wait. So that you can get an idea of what this thing should look like when you're done. No, we don't want to look at that. No, don't log me out. Okay. We want to, here it is. Don't tell me how to drive. So this is what your essay should look like. So you don't have to have a title, by the way. Some teachers do ask for them. I don't care. But notice how it starts off in the article, and here's the title, and here's the author. Notice how long my summary is. About 4 lines. Not very long at all. It was a 5-page, I'm going to kill that dog. It was a 5-page article. Now, after that, it's all just my response. What did I think about it? Okay? So that's all you have to do. It's that easy. You do not need to put any kind of citation on this. As long as you tell me this part of it so that I know it was the article which article I assigned you. Okay? Because I know all that information already. This is when you want to think back to your audience. What do you have to tell your audience? This is one of those prime examples. Alright, if you have any problems, please email or call me.